So recently we had this podcast episode about loss that was with this theologian, like learned professor type named Jerry Sitzer. And he'd written this book where like 20 years ago about this devastating loss that he'd experienced, where he lost his mom and his wife and his daughter all in the same car accident. And as you can imagine, that was not an easy conversation, even 20 years later. So he was putting out like a new kind of preface, like a new beginning to the book that he'd written, which, I mean, was just read zillions and zillions. It was like the book about grief forever. And in the book, he talks about like fresh grief, fresh loss, like how do you try to rebuild your life when something has just absolutely blown to smithereens. And I guess I was really interested going into our conversation together about what he would say about loss now, like 2 decades after, when the grief is not fresh, when your life has in fact been like completely upended but then remade. Then like what is grief like then? And so I guess I was just really interested in that question of like life after loss in perpetuity. And one of the more, I don't know, the conversation a little bit blew my mind because we were talking about what happens when, is there a real fix for grief? And like, is there kind of like a cure for the things that take our lives apart? And he was like, well, no, there isn't. And I was like, well, I think there kind of is because I have chronic cancer. And I was like, well, I feel like a cure for cancer would sort of be a cure. And he said this amazing thing. He was like, oh, but Kate, like the dirty little secret about miracles is that they never last. Like even the good things in our life, time, circumstances, like they slowly get taken apart. And that was a terrible thing to say, but also kind of a wonderful thing to remember, that like we can't just expect there to be a solution. We have to learn to live with the things we can't change. And that's kind of what he ended up saying was, like an answer to the question, does it get easier? And he said, no, but you learn how to carry it. And so one of the most popular kind of blessings, little sort of prayers that Jessica Ritchie and I, my executive producer, and I do at the end of the podcast is do these little blessings. And this one was a blessing for life after a loss. And I think you'll be able to hear the like Jerry Sitzer broken heartness of it in what became kind of one of the biggest, most shared, most kind of responded to things that we did this last year. So here goes. A blessing for life after a loss. Blessed are you who feel the wound of a fresh loss, or of the loss, no matter how fresh, that still makes your voice crack all these years later. You who are stuck in the impossibility, frozen in disbelief. How can this be? It wasn't supposed to be this way. Blessed are you, fumbling around for answers or truths to make this go down easier, who demand answers or are dissatisfied with the shallow theology and trite platitudes. Blessed are we who, instead, demand a blessing, because we have wrestled with God and are here, wounded, broken, changed. Blessed are we who keep parenting, who keep our marriages and friendships and jobs afloat, who stock the pantry because what choice do we have but to move forward with a life we didn't choose, with a loss we thought we couldn't live without. One small step, one small act of hope at a time. I guess that's what it comes down to, is the small hopes that help us carry something that otherwise would be impossible. So bless you in your small acts of hope today.